We should have a conversation about what WWE has got in the works, because if you guys watched Raw this past week, there was a delivery to the WWE upper management, and it was a huge crate. Last time we saw something like that, I think it was the debut of Sting. Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen, but it sounds like WWE is preparing to make a debut happen on February 28th. Now, we have been told for a while that there's quite a few people potentially joining the WWE. We know David Finlay's a free agent. We know Evil has been tied to WWE. We know there's been talks about maybe Hiromu Takahashi coming to WWE. But I think this is actually a lot different than what you guys might be expecting. Right now, there is no 1,000,000% confirmation here, but we should probably talk about who that debut is and look no further. It is expected to be former AEW star Danhausen. Now, this is very interesting because some people believe it's going to be Chris Jericho, and for a good reason, right? When you see the text on the box, it looks like you're looking at the countdown to Chris Jericho text. Then also a WWE staff member holding a clipboard. I think you can also make the connection to the you just made the list. But WWE teasing Chris Jericho doesn't really sound up their alley. When you look at Chris Jericho potentially coming in, I think it's pretty certain he would be coming in. But what would be a gimmicky, comedic way to introduce a talent in this certain circumstance? And I think Danhausen would be the correct answer. Imagine you're watching Elimination Chamber and somebody backstage is right there when it's being opened. Maybe with Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis, they're opening this crate, and next thing you know, Danhausen is the one to pop out and curse whoever is there. And I think it makes a lot of sense for Danhausen to curse, I don't know, maybe Logan Paul or Austin Theory or somebody else part of the Vision. But I think this is a very likely outcome. I think we should be expecting Danhausen in this particular situation. Now, months and months ago, when there was rumors of Danhausen coming to WWE, there was a lot of speculation that he would be going straight to NXT, which is a very good chance. Technically he could debut at Elimination Chamber. He could debut pretty much any time and then get assigned to NXT. WWE very well could do that, and I understand why WWE would probably utilize him on a PLE. The problem, though, with Danhausen, and what makes me so intrigued, is would Danhausen generate a major reaction? And it really just depends where WWE is. I think Chicago is a hot market, and I think those fans there would be very in tune with who Danhausen is. But the problem is if it's not Danhausen, and let's just say hypothetically it was Evil or Hiromu Takahashi, you got to be very careful because that could be anticlimactic. You got to look at this from a perspective of not only what makes sense in front of the crowd, but also what makes sense with the reveal. A guy like Evil or David Finlay or Hiromu Takahashi coming out of this crate would probably be looked at in a way people would probably laugh, honestly, and not for a good reason. But if it was Danhausen and he was cursing Logan Paul or Austin Theory or something like that, maybe that would generate a different reaction. There was a lot of talk about Danhausen and his contract situation with AEW. I have maintained a lot of updates on this particular situation for months now, but it looked like there was added time to his contract. And I think AEW kind of accepted the fact that Danhausen would be gone from the company. I think it would be really, really, really dope for AEW to bring in Danhausen back to the company, but they didn't do that. And for whatever reason, it is what it is, but I just genuinely believe that Danhausen is a character that works. Whether it's in AEW or WWE, I think it works. I'm not talking about this guy winning Intercontinental Championship or TNT Championship, but wrestling should have a little bit of comedy, and I think it would have been cool for AEW to utilize him a little bit more. This guy moves a lot of merchandise. The fact that AEW hasn't brought him in is kind of interesting to me, but that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a loss for AEW, and it's not some massive win for WWE either. I just think it would be a solid signing. So a lot of the signs point to Danhausen, but it hasn't been officially confirmed. But of course, I'll keep you guys updated along the way. What do you think? Do you think Danhausen would get a good reaction? Drop a comment down below. Now I want to switch gears to a major WWE announcement, and I have been telling you guys ever since TKO took over this company, I expected this to happen, and trust me, more of this will happen because WWE revealed today that Dude Wipes is now the official partner of WWE. But no, that's literally not just it. Dude Wipes will also be on WWE talent integrations. So what this means is that Dude Wipes will have a prominent presence across high-profile WWE events and platforms, strategically activating through enhanced match sponsorships at premium live events. This also includes SummerSlam 2026. There's going to be curated social and digital content, and there's going to be a custom Dude Wipes commercial featuring WWE superstars. But this is where it gets even more insane. Additionally, reigning Intercontinental Champion and AAA Mega Champion Dominic Mysterio will participate in a first-of-its-kind integration in which his signature gear will feature Dude Wipes branding during every in-ring appearance on WWE programming, including Monday Night Raw and various PLEs. The integration we did see on Monday Night Raw, he was wearing his regular t-shirt, but it also had Dude Wipes branding on it. Now, this is a massive announcement. I have talked about talent having integrated sponsors on their ring gear, and everybody hated the idea. Everybody hated the idea, and quite frankly, I understand. I get it. I am not mad, but I told you guys for like 2 years now it's coming. This is very, very, very interesting, but it also makes a lot of business sense. The thing is, I hate it on from a fan perspective, I hate it, but from a business perspective, I totally get it. If you're the UFC or WWE, you should be putting logos everywhere and selling sponsorships. I mean, we see this sort of thing in boxing and MMA and kickboxing, and yeah, I get it. We see it in other sports, but we don't see it in WWE. TKO is definitely taking that combat sports approach. I get it. I understand it. But from a fan's perspective, I think it's a little too much. And I can't remember who put this tweet out there. Somebody put a tweet out today, and it's bothering me that I couldn't find it. But it was basically saying, we are this close to getting to the point where we start selling sponsorships on title belts. And that was something I talked about 2 years ago, too. I don't think we're going to see a WWE Dude Wipes Championship. That's not going to happen. But what I could very well see is WWE selling side plates for sponsorships. And I think we are getting closer to that. I think WWE and TKO are looking at activating sponsorships everywhere that makes sense. And, if you're Roman Reigns and you're carrying the World Heavyweight Championship and one of the side plates is literally a Wendy's logo or a McDonald's logo, it sounds crazy, but I think it really could happen. TKO is money hungry. They are going to keep doing things like this. It starts off with, the barricades and the Trons, right? Next thing you know, Dominic Mysterio has Dude Wipes on his shirt. Dude, don't be shocked if we get to the point where WWE activates sponsorships on the titles, on the side plates. And I think that is so going to happen. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be upset about it. I understand you should be upset about it. But at the end of the day, from a business perspective, it is really hard to argue against it because it is a model that has worked for other sports, other combat sports. You know what I'm saying? It's true. We've seen it. And they know it works because it's been successful elsewhere. WWE is going to keep doing things like this. I think maybe, just maybe, we'll get to a point where WWE slows down, but I think that would be very unlikely. Now, today we got some really big MMA news, and I know you're probably wondering, why am I talking about MMA? Well, I do think there is a connection to WWE here, so let's just kind of talk about it. MVP Promotions, which is the promotional brand from Jake Paul and Nikisa, they both, typically would do boxing events and stuff like that. They came out and made an announcement today with Netflix that they're bringing Ronda Rousey out of retirement for a 5-round, 5-minute per round MMA fight against Gina Carano. Now, for the MMA fans out there of the world, you know that this was a fight that was supposed to go down before a long time ago. Talks got screwed over. Dana White kind of pretty much ruined that. And now MVP, who typically does boxing events, is doing an MMA event, which is the first time that Netflix will be bringing live MMA to the platform. So you're probably wondering, what is the connection to WWE here? Well, there had been rumors that Ronda Rousey would return to wrestling. We seen her train, and then we thought, okay, maybe she's coming back to the UFC. Well, it turns out that's not the case. They're doing MMA on Netflix. However, with WWE and Netflix having such strong connections to each other, there is a belief that WWE could be sending out talent for this event, especially considering the fact that Ronda Rousey was a former WWE champion. There is a chance that WWE could be involved in promotional stuff here. Now, we don't know if that's true. We don't know if that's going to be confirmed. But if you're Netflix, you know that Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano is a massive, massive fight. This is going to bring a lot of attention to Netflix. You could probably imagine at some point some cross promotion between the two brands. And with WWE having that connection to Ronda Rousey, I would say it's probably safe to assume that they will even use Ronda Rousey's WWE footage leading up to some of the, the build-up and promotional videos and things of that nature, which obviously because of Netflix and WWE, that would be made possible. Now, let's just be clear, WWE doesn't have any connection to promoting the event. At this time, it doesn't sound like TKO is involved, but it is important to at least mention, because Netflix is responsible for WWE programming on their platform, they're probably going to try and bring awareness to that program. We have seen, even with Netflix, for example, the guy that just climbed that tall-ass skyscraper, Seth Rollins, was literally one of the commentators. Like, he was part of the panel for that event. So Netflix, when they do these live integrations and these live premium live events, even if it's not associated with WWE, you can almost guarantee that WWE in some capacity will be involved. However, I kind of think it is a interesting spot for WWE and TKO to be in, because Dana White and the UFC is under TKO, and they're not the ones throwing this event. So obviously TKO only has connections to Netflix because of WWE, not because of the UFC. But overall, I'm actually kind of excited about this. I think MMA is better in general than boxing. And I think Jake Paul getting into the business of throwing an event of this magnitude, it sounds like it's one and done. But it will be very, very interesting to see what they do with that undercard. It'll be very interesting to see how they put on this show. And honestly, it's a challenge for TKO, because the UFC, it kind of feels like it's hitting a dry, stale part of business right now. So, this might be the fire that lights them up, and obviously we'll see what happens. But it is interesting that Ronda Rousey is not coming back to wrestling, but after having 2 babies, she is now coming back to MMA. It's been such a long time since we've seen her fight, and it's been a very long time since we've seen Gina Carano fight. So may the best lady win, but we'll see what happens there. All right, guys, and we'll just leave it at that for the day. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time.